Hi, this is Eternal King here, bringing you another gaming video today. So sorry for the hiatus on recording. I'd had a pretty bad case of the flu for the last week, honestly. Pretty bad, but we're back now, and we're talking about boomer shooters. So previously we had talked about Wolfenstein, the New Order, and that game was pretty good. I would say that it was on the realistic side of the spectrum when it comes to boomer shooters. And now we're talking about the game that I basically mainlined like cocaine during my flu on Steam Deck, and that is Shadow Warrior 2. So, when it comes to Shadow Warrior 2, it is an exceptionally unique game because it is essentially a perfect mixture between a looter shooter, specifically Borderlands would be the main inspiration, not Destiny. Destiny is not a very good game or a good game franchise in my opinion. That's a topic for another video though. But yeah, it is specifically a mixture between Borderlands and, Shadow Warrior, essentially, a traditional boomer shooter. And that is Shadow Warrior 2. And we can go on a little bit into a lot of the things that make the game so fascinating from a boomer shooter perspective. And it is weapon customization, weapon modification, weapon rarity to a lesser extent. It's not actually that important. The way that this game is balanced, that even like the commons and the default weapons that you get can be just as good as legendaries if you mod them correctly. Sorry, you can still hear it on my chest a little bit. You also have access to, melee weapons and a very comprehensive melee system. You have bows, rocket launchers, grenade launchers as well. Machine guns, miniguns, all kinds of shotguns. And a lot of the weapons that you can find are optional, so I've missed a bunch of them. But there's a ton of weapon variety in this game. Then you have assault rifles, submachine guns, pistols of various flavors and varieties. You have short blades, so that is things like claws, variety of claws, and then, melee weapons. Again, a lot of different flavorful types of weapons here. And then, of course, finally you have swords, being, your traditional katanas, dual swords, and things of that nature. So, considering that this is a boomer shooter, there is a lot of weapon variety compared to what you would normally see here. And we're just going to hop into a mission just to show you the way that the game plays in the central gameplay loop. I was playing on a fairly high difficulty, and I found that by the time I got to the last boss, I absolutely demolished it. Now, I'm no stranger to RPGs and, Borderlands in particular. I basically have all four Borderlands characters, Borderlands 3 characters, maxed out for Mayhem 10. So, again, I am fairly familiar with that gameplay concept. And also, when it comes to boomer shooters, I grew up with the likes of Duke Nukem 3D. I grew up with Shadow Warrior. I grew up with Serious Sam. I grew up with, pretty much all the major hallmarks. Doom, of course. And it's fitting now that, all these years later, almost 2 decades later, that we're getting these revivals, and every single revival is attempting to do something unique or interesting. So in the case of Shadow Warrior 2, one of the big things that sets it apart is its native double jump and dash system. So you are free to ninja sprint, you are free to dash, and then, of course, use all of these weapons that you've been upgrading and hoarding to essentially kill hordes of enemies. Yeah, that's probably going to be very loud on your end, but this gun is very powerful in the context of this game. Yeah, I'm sorry if that's going to blow out your eardrums a little bit. But yeah, so that is kind of the central gameplay loop, is that you take these exceptionally powerful boomer shooter weapons. In this case, I am using kind of like a musket shotgun that I've upgraded with a charge shot. And you clear, essentially, groups of enemies, and then you loot them for their modifications. And then your hero says something quippy, right? So it is very similar. It's about halfway between like a Serious Sam and, you know, again, a traditional boomer shooter. Now we'll try to look at some of the melee weapons because the melee system is actually quite well fleshed out. And every time you kill a group of enemies, sometimes you'll get logs as well, like text logs, if you want to delve into the quote-unquote lore of this game. You'll also get fortune cookies. Yeah, you'll also get fortune cookies, which are like a joke, usually. You can see in this case I've got a chainsaw sword that glows blue. Like, that's just cool. Having a chainsaw sword that glows blue is just cool, right? Like, rule of cool is basically Shadow Warrior 2. Again, you have a lot of mobility, you have a lot of movement up your sleeve, you have powerful ranged weapons, you have powerful melee weapons. They are fully customizable, and I believe the total weapon variety is like over 50 weapons, which is a lot for a boomer shooter. And then also you have ninja abilities. Like, for example, we can use this spell to essentially turn invisible. And then we can charge up one of our special melee attacks if we want to. Like a big spin slash. Yeah, so you get different ninja abilities as well. You have 4 of them that you can use in combination with your melee weapons, your ranged weapons. You can basically stack an entire weapon wheel with whatever you want to use. In this case, we can show off some of these dual revolvers if you guys want. And again, there's no fall damage because this is just a fun looter shooter, right? So that is basically the central gameplay loop, is that similar to a Serious Sam, you're going to be doing a lot of backpedaling and kiting as you sort of mow down gangs of enemies.
Bang, 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 fuckface!
It's very simple. It's a very simple and cathartic gameplay loop. Like, you have the boomer shooter gameplay, and then you have the Borderlands, looting cycle. And it turns out that after I played 15 hours of this game, and I absolutely demolished the main boss, I just wanted to keep playing more, which was kind of a very good sign.
Like this isn't your millennium.
There's also a rage mode, in case you're curious. And so there's also a Devil Trigger mode that you can use to do extra damage if you want to. Yeah, so it's a very simple style of game. It's an exceptionally simple style of game where you're going to be running around, backpedaling, dashing, sprinting, looting, and using these exceptionally powerful tools at your disposal to clear waves of enemies while your hero, in this case Lo Wang, makes one-liners.
Making you dead makes me feel so alive.
And that's the central gameplay loop of Shadow Warrior 2. And like I said, it's very rare that I find games that I want to devour essentially in a simple, straightforward 15-minute time span. And it's very rare, more so rare, that I find games that I want to play more of after I finish them. At my age, it is exceptionally rare. And if I had to guess why, it just comes down to a very simple thing. New gameplay concepts are fun. For example, boomer shooters are not new, and Borderlands is not a new gameplay concept, but when you combined a boomer shooter with a looter shooter, you have a boomer looter. And it turns out that boomer looters are very fun, and this is the only one that actually exists, and that makes it a very fun and unique game. I'm not saying that every single boomer shooter needs to be a looter shooter. That's a really bad idea. Certain games, like the ones made by id Software, should stay the way they are. Wolfenstein: The New Order is a fun game. Doom 2016 is a fun game. But the reality is that I actually spent more time playing this than I did either of those titles in one sitting, right? When it came to Doom 2016 and when it came to Wolfenstein, Doom 2016 I beat a while back, very fun game. But the reality is that I did not beat it in like a span of like a weekend all at once because I was having so much fun. And I did not, Wolfenstein: The New Order I will get through, but I'm doing it like one chapter at a time. And it's just because, I think that Shadow Warrior 2 is the ultimate evolution of what a looter shooter should be. It's the ultimate evolution of what a boomer looter should be, which again, it's basically one of a kind in that regard, because boomer looters are not a genre of game that you will ever see anywhere outside of this title. And that's kind of a shame. I think it's exceptionally fun and cathartic to sprint and dash around while, killing waves of enemies, but also the fact that those waves of enemies can potentially drop something that is useful to you. And that's just, my kind of take on the whole thing, is that Shadow Warrior 2 is lightning in a bottle, and it is more fun and more interesting than any boomer looter ought to be, because that concept sounds like a possible disaster. Why would you want to play a game like Doom or Wolfenstein that also happens to be a Borderlands style experience? And you can tell that even these are very similar to Skags from Borderlands. If you've ever played Borderlands, there's little dog enemies called Skags. These are basically identical to Skags in the way that they're behaving, but they're little, demon boars. And yeah, so what you end up with is that you have these live service games like Destiny that basically never end and really never start being fun. And then you have something like Shadow Warrior 2 that's 15 hours, and I don't want to stop playing it even though the game is ostensibly over. I demolished the last boss with my chain sword and basically killed her entire life bar in one rage mode, like one Devil Trigger rage mode. I just demolished her entire life bar, and the game was over at that point. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, I guess, I'm pretty good at building for these RPGs and these styles of games. But I would have played this game for another 10 hours. So that's really, I think, interesting, talking about the current games industry and how every game is trend chasing and every game is afraid of, trying something distinct. But then you get to the indie scene and you get these weird hybrid titles of like, oh yay, you like Doom and you like Duke Nukem 3D and you like Shadow Warrior and you like all this stuff. How would you enjoy it if it was mixed with a Borderlands title? And it turns out the answer to that question is that it is very good. Even when it comes to transitioning between your mission and the hub level to deal with merchants, honestly, this is less of a pain than Borderlands. One of the things that's very old school about Borderlands is that if you want to buy new guns, you have to go to vending machines, and they're littered all over the place. You saw there that the time it took for me to get between the mission that I was playing and the vendor, it was roughly 1.5 seconds. And that's about how long it should take in a looter shooter to get between the guy that sells you stuff and then getting back to the mission. And we can press the same teleport button if we want to get right back to the mission. But yeah, this has just been a fun little like post-fever talk. We'll check out, you know, the Wang Cave, essentially. So we even have a Serious Sam arcade machine, just kind of like a throwback to, you know, another one of the great boomer shooters. But I don't know. This is kind of like this amazing lightning in the bottle situation where you buy this game on sale on Steam for $3. You play it on your Steam Deck. It's exactly 15 hours long, and you absolutely demolish it instantly to the point that you wish that there was more game left to play, but there simply isn't, because again, boomer shooters are traditionally quite short to play through. But yeah, give these guys your support. Talk about like which boomer shooters are you playing? Have you played Wolfenstein? Did you play Doom 2016? And in this case, I've got like an explosive bow here. You know, so again, you can mod your weapons and make them do like super interesting and fun things. Or this is a grenade launcher that's gonna like blow up into a bunch of icicles. If I don't miss entirely. There you go. Yeah, so like there's a lot of customization happening there with the weapons. And in fact, the way that Borderlands works, you usually don't get that much. You don't tend to get that much customization when it comes to Borderlands. You don't really get to mod your weapons. It's just, you know, the way that most looter shooters work is that it's just RNG. You get what you get. And this is the first looter shooter that I played that it's actually less about the weapons and it's more about the mods you kind of put into them. And I think it's good. I think everything about this game, down to the detailing of Lo Wang's car, is just perfect. It is a perfect 15-hour RPG boomer shooter, which again, I'm amazed I'm saying those words. And it's like this perfect breath of fresh air in an oversaturated marketplace, which is the gaming industry. Too many remakes, too many live service games, too much trend chasing, too much, you know, everyone else is doing this, what should we do? You know, Concord was trying to be Overwatch and then it failed. A lot of games try to be Fortnite and they fail. And like, I think of all the money that goes into that. Starfield tried to be Destiny and it failed. Like, I think of all of these projects that should be good on paper, given the money, the millions and millions of dollars that have been poured into them. And they're just terrible. And then you look at games that cost like nothing to make, stuff like this, and it's just like, wow, it's a 15-hour perfect video game that I probably would have paid like $40 for on launch. If I'd been allowed to. You know, if I'd known that this game was that good, but unfortunately it didn't get a lot of press and marketing, so I didn't know that, and I kind of came to it late. But had I known, I would have bought this on launch for full price. Because, and it plays like much better on Steam Deck than it does on my dated PC, and it plays exceptionally well. To the point that like I just want more Shadow Warrior 2. I just want to play another 30 hours of this over, you know, instead of, you know, maybe we get a Borderlands 4. It'd be great if we did. But if we do get a Borderlands 4, I honestly think that, you know, Randy Pitchford could probably learn a lot from Shadow Warrior 2 in terms of like making your next Borderlands title a little more fluid and a little more action-packed. Like just adding a dash, adding a double jump, you know, stuff like that could make the game a lot more interesting. Because again, you know, the opposite of that is something like Destiny, where like it's just like Halo with, you know, randomly dropped loot, and it's just not that interesting. Alright, this has been Shadow Warrior 2. This is Eternal King signing out. I will quickly mention that Sunny has picked up my Emperor's Army Azir Aurelia deck and highlighted it about a year later, and has said that it is one of the best decks in Eternal, or LOR, you know, Legends of Runeterra, period, full stop. And to be honest, that doesn't surprise me. I kind of am just generally good at video games. It doesn't really matter which one I'm playing. I kind of just blow them up. Like, that's typically what I do. And so card games, which are almost like strategy RPGs in a lot of ways, I'm good at those. I'm good at shooters. I'm good at, you know, most types of games I have played at some point. I'm pretty decent at. I'm definitely functional. But yeah, so again, perfectly happy to have him kind of showing that off and saying that it's one of the best decks in the game. This is Eternal King signing out once again. You know, stay classy, San Diego.